I think people are probably a lot less socialized right now than before. And I don't mean like March 2025 right now. I mean like in the 2020s, in this modern digital era, I think we're probably a lot less socialized than we ever have been, right? I can't speak for certain because I wasn't around in the 80s, but hearing stories from, my parents' generation or even millennials or what's the one above them, Gen X, they had a different view on social life. Oftentimes, when they'll be telling a story or anything like that, it's almost like they have a whole different philosophy behind socialization as compared to, our generation, Generation Z. I don't know why I said Generation Z as if it's so important. I think, obviously, you can go into like, phones have ruined the world or whatever like that, but there are obvious differences. I think it's a bit of a played out line at this point to go into all those differences, but there are very obvious ones. One of, in my opinion, the really bad results of those obvious differences, though, is that people are really averse to conflict. And I don't mean like, I'm not trying to come here and be like, I'm a conflict-prone person. Maybe I am. There is a case for that, right? I think people, if you talk to the right person, they would say I am. But I'm taking this from a different angle of sometimes, in order to have a healthy relationship, you need bad times. You need, really, really bad times. You need awkward moments. You need arguments. You need subtle, awkward pauses where something crazy can be said right there that neither of you are going to say. You need these things. And I think people are really scared of having them. This is something that I guess is almost hard to talk about because it's more of like a vibes-based thing. But I can't tell you how many times I've been talking to friends and like they'll be telling me about a problem. Let me give this scenario, right? I'll be a friend, they'll be like, I'm having trouble with Katie. Why? Katie is doing this and I don't like it. And I'm like, well, tell Katie that. And usually their answer will be something along the lines of like, no, that'll make Katie upset, or no, then it'll make things awkward. Or, a thing I often hear is like, no, then Katie will be upset with me and not talk to me. And it's like, well, fuck Katie then. You know what I mean? Like, so often, because everyone is so averse to having a difficult conversation now, we avoid any tough conversations in general. And I think this is really bad. I think, like, to have a, how many times should I say I think in the same sentence? But I do believe that in order to have a healthy relationship, sometimes you need to sit somebody down and have a conversation with them that's not exactly pleasurable. I don't think that's a hot take at all. I don't think that's a new revelation. I think everyone would agree with that, just a lot of people aren't putting it into practice, I also see a lot of people like they are going into a scenario knowing they want to say something. They got maybe a bug on their shoulder, or no, that's not it. They got a chip on their shoulder, and they're going in, they're like, I'm gonna talk about this, I'm gonna get through this, and then the second they get into that scenario, they get cold feet, because people aren't used to just like talking things out. And I feel like there's an angle you could take this whole conversation, that I'm like encouraging conflict. You know what, maybe a little bit I am, to be honest. I think like we could all use a little bit more messiness in our life. I really do. I think like the average person right now probably is like not arguing enough or having enough like tough things going on in their relationships. Like I kind of do think that like people could, but that's not actually what I'm arguing for. You know what I mean? Like I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you and be like, no, you need to be a peaceful dove. I don't believe that at all. But like, I'm not encouraging conflict for no reason. I'm saying that when there's a scenario where conflict could arise, don't always prevent it. And I don't mean don't prevent it by, let me figure out how to phrase this, right? Because there's two ways of not preventing conflict. There's the way of like, no, I know there's a scenario where both parties can be happy and nothing bad happens. Of course, if that's an option, do it. I mean, like, duh, right? I'm not an idiot. But there's a whole lot of scenarios where both parties can't be happy at the end. And I think a lot of people, or maybe this is just people in my social circle, people I'm friends with do this, they choose the easier route, which is non-action, which is not having a difficult conversation, which doesn't lead to a better scenario. It just leads to them being unhappier. And this goes back to something I've talked about a lot on here of like, how many compromises can you make? You know, if it's something simple as like, I don't like the place to eat that my friends picked out, yeah, no, shut your ass up. Like that's not important. That doesn't matter in the long run. But there are some times where you gotta go in there and you gotta let things get shaky. You gotta let things be, you know, bad so they can be good later on. I think that's the biggest thing here is, you know, isn't it how muscles grow, where it's like you break them again and again and they regrow stronger every time? Isn't that how muscles grow? Even if it's not, let's just run with it because it works for my analogy here. I think that's how relationships grow. I think that, you know, not always, but oftentimes it's very important to let things not break, because in a relationship, the connotation of breaking would mean it's not going to come back, right? I don't mean break, but you let things get a little bad so they can be good again later. I believe I've said this before in a Paint Talk, but avoiding difficult conversations makes short-term, let me rephrase this because it'll probably be the title of the episode. I think it's a very nice title. When you avoid difficult conversations, all you're doing is trading out short-term discomfort for long-term dysfunction. You know, you gotta let things be bad. And the other thing is, I think people oftentimes really want things to be good right away. You know, they don't want to hear, no, you're gonna get a little mad at each other. Maybe you'll be mad for a month, but then everything's gonna be better, and you're gonna understand each other better. You know, people don't want to hear that. They want to hear you're gonna have a conversation, and things are gonna be better by the end of that. And if they can't have that option, usually they'll just let things be worse for a long time. Or maybe it's slightly worse until it just falls apart. You know, that's that long-term dysfunction kind of thing. You know, friends of mine have often been like, oh, I'm gonna get back with an ex or something like that. And I feel like in my personal experience, getting back with a partner is it's slightly worse than last time right off the bat, and only keeps getting a little bit worse and a little bit worse every time you get back together until one day it's totally undoable, you know? And I say that, kind of a weird tangent there, right? But I say it to the end that's what I think happens with friendships a lot of the time, when you avoid these conversations, when you're too scared of having an awkward moment, when you're too, or not even, this is the other thing, is like, as I was saying, people want it to be an awkward moment. Sometimes it's gonna be like an awkward month. Sometimes it's gonna be an awkward week. Sometimes it can be you're around a person and it's not like quite what it should be, you know, even though you had that conversation, everything's good, it's not gonna be good right away, you know. Things aren't gonna be perfect, but you need to be okay with that if you want things to be sustainable. You know, I've gone through year-long rough patches with friends, people who I'm now really close to, and it's way better than it ever would be if those rough patches didn't happen, because you need to test the limits, you need to know boundaries. You know, when people are they're not machines, right? They're gonna have weird things about them, things that don't make sense, and you can't write up a contract or you know, have some formula to learn that. What you need to do is you need to test the boundaries, understand, okay, this is a person who is here for X, Y, and Z, and I can do X, Y, and Z with this person. You know, I know that this person's great to go to the beach with, but their boundary might not be great for taking a hike in the woods. Of course, that's more metaphorical for how you would deal with a relationship. I hope that's not too abstract. But I think these things are very necessary to uphold healthy relationships. I think people, and this goes back to people being less socialized right now, where we have this connotation that a healthy relationship is one without conflict, and I don't think that's true. And I'm trying to choose my words very carefully here, because I don't believe that. I think that healthy relationships do have conflict, and maybe even a fair amount of conflict. Well, not too much. You know what I mean? You need a sweet spot in there. The opposite of this too is people that have like a lot of dysfunctional conflict. Have you ever met one of them? Or not dysfunctional, but meaningless. There's a whole lot of people out there who like fight with their partner or whatever over things that don't matter at all. And I think that's the extreme opposite end of this. That's just as bad in my opinion. That's not what this Paint and Talk's about though. I think that a healthy relationship is one where conflict is productive, right? You need a productive amount of conflict to make sure things are still good. There's this idea. This is a super weird reference. I hope it makes sense to you guys. Within like politics and like constitutions, there's this idea that like every now and again you need something a little bad to happen to test the framework of a constitution, a political system, and I think relationships are the same way, right? I know so many friends who are like, and this could be relationships as in friendships or anything like that, who are like, oh, we're not friends anymore. It's like, why? And it was like, I looked at them wrong, or I forgot to Venmo them in time, like small things like that. And it's like, this is good. It's almost like a filter of sorts, you know? That's why I think conflict and having these tough things are so good, because you need them. You need to have filters of like, no, this person was not meant to be around too long. Because without it, by avoiding things, you're going to be surrounded by a lot of people who aren't really friends. You know, you're gonna be surrounded by a lot of people who you don't really need or want to be surrounded with. And I think it's important to have a high quality, degree of person around you. And I don't mean it in the way that I think a lot of people might take it of like, if your circle isn't discussing stock trading and all that bullshit, then they're not good friends. I mean it in terms of like, you want real high quality people around you. You don't want people who are dragging you down or lying to you or anything like that. And I think that having conflict, having rough patches, letting things be shaky for a while so they can grow back better is a filter for that, to make sure that like, no, the people around me are meant to be around me, and I can rely on the fact they're gonna keep being around me because we've gone through tough things in the past, and I know we're gonna go through tough things in the future, and that's fine because we've done it in the past. Who says we can't do it again? And that is why I motivate all of you to get in more fights. This is the painting. Let's see. I don't know why I said let's see as if I haven't seen it the whole time. Almost as if I was like let's do the reveal. So I picked these colors, going for kind of a color palette thing, right? Thinking like it could be a fun little exercise. And then I think this ochre is cooler when it has a little bit of like rustiness to it around the edges. So I decided not to fill it in all the way. Unlike the one I did a couple days ago, which I did fill in all the way. Both look cool. I think this is neat. I don't know. I think this needs to be lighter for what I was going for to really work. It's interesting though, and I think again that's what I'm going for. It's interesting, and we take those. We take interesting. I would rather an interesting, purposeful painting than an unpurposefully uninteresting painting. So go check it out over on Instagram to see the exact thing typed up with maybe a few more thoughts. I don't know. I can't really articulate this one quite too well. So definitely go check out the Instagram today. And until tomorrow, guys, gals, and pals, my name is Max Dice. This has been Paint and Talk episode 77. I'm here every morning painting and talking with you all.